Adebimpe sat under the big mango tree in front of her family house. The sun was hot and beads of sweat formed on her forehead. She waved her hand to chase away flies that buzzed around her. Her two best friends, Shade and Ronke, sat beside her, fanning themselves with pieces of cardboard. "I can't wait to live this poor life," Adebimpe said, frowning as she looked at her torn slippers. Ronke laughed. "What is new, Adebimpe? You always talk about leaving poverty. Are you not tired of saying the same thing every day?" Adebimpe shook her head. "No, Ronke, this is not a joke. I must marry a rich man, whether he is an internet fraudster or a businessman. As long as he has money, I don't care." Shade gasped. "Bimpe, you mean you will marry someone who does bad things to make money?" "Yes," Adebimpe replied, her eyes wide with determination. "I don't care how he makes the money. I just know I can't marry someone like those struggling men who ride Okada or sell bread in traffic. I must live in a big house, drive a car and wear expensive clothes." Ronke sighed. "But what if those rich men don't love you? What if they only want to use you?" Adebimpe waved her hand dismissively. "Love? Who cares about love? Love doesn't pay bills. Do you think love can buy me gold jewelry or an iPhone?" Shade looked worried. "But what about the kind, hardworking men who love God and treat you well? My cousin Tunde is a teacher and he's looking for a wife. He's a good man, Bimpe." Bimpe burst into laughter. "Teacher? Shade, you want me to marry a teacher? How much does he earn? I don't want to suffer like my parents did. Look at my father, working as a security guard all his life, yet we can't even eat 3 square meals." Ronke looked thoughtfully. "But Bimpe, what if the rich man you marry is hiding something dangerous? What if he has a dark secret?" Adebimpe shrugged. "Then I'll pretend not to see it. I will enjoy my life. Let me suffer now and enjoy later." Later that evening, as Bimpe walked home, she saw a black SUV parked near her street. The car was shiny and looked very expensive. A man in a white agbada stepped out of the car. He looked around, his dark sunglasses hiding his eyes. "Who is that?" Bimpe whispered to herself. She slowed down, pretending to tie her wrapper so she could watch him. The man noticed her and smiled. "Hello, young lady," he called out. Adebimpe's heart skipped a beat. The man's voice was deep and smooth. She quickly adjusted her scarf and smiled shyly. "Good evening, sir. What is your name?" the man asked, walking closer. "Adebimpe," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "You have a beautiful name, Adebimpe," the man said, looking up and down. "Do you live around here?" "Yes, sir," she said, feeling both nervous and excited. The man smiled again. "Tell your parents I will come and visit them soon. I want to get to know you better." As the man drove away, Adebimpe's mind raced. Who was this man? Was he rich? Could he be the one to change her life forever? When Adebimpe got home, she told her mother about the man she had met. "Bimpe, be careful," her mother warned. "Not every rich man is a blessing. Some are trouble in disguise." But Adebimpe didn't listen. She couldn't stop thinking about the man and his expensive car. Little did she know that meeting would change her life in ways she could never imagine. Days turned into weeks, and Adebimpe couldn't stop thinking about the man in the black SUV. Every evening, she would sit outside her house, hoping to see him again. She imagined herself riding in his car, wearing fancy clothes and living the life of her dreams. One afternoon, while Adebimpe was washing clothes by the well, her younger brother Tunde came running towards her. Sister Bimpe, someone is asking for you. Adebimpe looked up, startled. Who is that? I don't know, Tunde said, panting, but he came in a big car. Her heart skipped a beat. She quickly wiped her hands on her wrapper and followed Tunde to the front of their house. There he was, the man in the white agbada. His car was parked outside, shining in the sun. He leaned casually against the door, holding a cane with a gold handle. Good afternoon, sir, Adebimpe said, bowing slightly. The man smiled. Good afternoon, Adebimpe. I told you I would visit, didn't I? Yes, sir, she said, feeling her cheeks flush. Her mother stepped out of the house, wiping her hands on her apron. Good afternoon, sir, she greeted, looking curious. Please, who are you? My name is Mr. Alao, the man said, his voice deep and commanding. I came to speak with you about your daughter. Adebimpe's mother frowned. My daughter? Is there a problem? Not at all, Mr. Alao said with a smile. I have been watching Adebimpe for a while now. She's a fine young woman and I would like to marry her. Adebimpe gasped. Marry me? Her mother's frown deepened. Marry my daughter? But we don't even know you, sir. Mr. Alao chuckled. I understand your concern. I am a businessman from Ibadan. I own several properties and companies. I have everything your daughter could ever need. I promise to take care of her and your family. Adebimpe's father, who had been listening from inside the house, came out and joined the conversation. This is a serious matter, he said, stroking his beard. Marriage is not something we rush into. Of course, Mr. Alao said, nodding respectfully. Take your time to think about it, but let me assure you, I will give Adebimpe a life of comfort and luxury. As her parents exchanged glances, Adebimpe could barely contain her excitement. This was it, the moment she has been waiting for. That evening, after Mr. Alao had left, her parents called her into the living room. Bimpe, her father began. Are you sure about this man? Marriage is not just about money. Adebimpe folded her arms. Daddy, I know what I want. Mr. Alao is rich and can take care of me. Isn't that what every parent wants for their child? Her mother sighed. But Bimpe, what do you know about him? Riches doesn't mean someone is good. Ah, Mama, please, Adebimpe said, rolling her eyes. Do you want me to marry a poor man and suffer like you and Daddy? This is my chance to escape poverty. Her parents looked at each other helplessly. I don't think we can change her mind, her father said at last. The days that followed were filled with preparations. Mr. Alao showered the family with gifts, bags of rice, cartons of milk, and an envelope stuffed with cash. Adebimpe's parents couldn't help but feel grateful, even if they still had doubts. One evening, as Adebimpe sat with her friends, she couldn't stop bursting. Can you imagine, she said, holding up the new gold earrings Mr. Alao had given her. This is just the beginning. Soon, I'll be living in a mansion. Shade frowned. Bimpe, are you sure about this man? Something about him doesn't feel right. Ah, Shade, you are jealous, Adebimpe said, laughing. I'm not jealous, Shade said, shaking her head. I just have a bad feeling. Ronke nodded. Me too. He seems too perfect. Be careful, Bimpe. Bimpe waved them off. You people are just bitter because no rich man has asked for your hand in marriage. But as she walked home that night, Shade's words echoed in her mind. For the first time, Adebimpe felt a twinge of doubt. Who exactly was Mr. Alao? She shook her head. It doesn't matter, she muttered to herself. He's rich and that's all that counts. Little did she know her decision would lead her down a dark and dangerous path. Adebimpe's wedding preparations were moving quickly. Mr. Alao spared no expense, ensuring every detail was grand and luxurious. From the gold-trimmed invitations to the custom-made wedding gown, it felt like a fairy tale. As the wedding day approached, Adebimpe couldn't hide her excitement. Her friends were in awe of the gifts she received daily: jewelry, expensive clothes, and even an iPhone. "Ah, Bimpe, you are lucky," Runke exclaimed one afternoon as they admired Adebimpe's new gold wristwatch. "Lucky ke," Adebimpe laughed, twirling in her new dress. "I told you I would marry a rich man." Sade, however, remained quiet. She stared at the wristwatch, her brow furrowed. "Bimpe, have you ever asked Mr. Alao about his work? How does he make all this money?" Adebimpe scoffed. "Sade, must you ask such questions? He's a businessman, that's all I need to know." Sade shook her head but said nothing more. The wedding was the talk of the town. The event was held in a massive hall in Ibadan, decorated with sparkling chandeliers and fresh flowers. Guests arrived in their finest attire, and musicians performed live, filling the air with excitement. Adebimpe looked stunning in her gown, and Mr. Alao was dressed in an elegant white agbada with gold embroidery. As they exchanged vows, Adebimpe felt like she was living her dream. "This is the life I've always wanted," she thought, smiling as she held her husband's hand. After the ceremony, Mr. Alao surprised her with the keys to a brand new mansion. The house was enormous, with marble floors, a swimming pool, and countless rooms. "This is our home now," he said, kissing her on the forehead. Adebimpe was overwhelmed. "Thank you, my husband. You've made me the happiest woman alive." For the first few weeks of their marriage, everything seemed perfect. Adebimpe spent her days exploring the house, shopping, and enjoying her new life. But one day, while cleaning, she noticed something strange. At the end of a long hallway, there was a door she had never seen open. "What's inside this room?" she asked one of the housemaids. The maid froze, her face pale. "Madam, that's Oga's private room. Nobody is allowed to go there." Adebimpe raised an eyebrow. "Nobody? Not even me?" The maid shook her head quickly. "No, madam. Oga said the room is forbidden." Adebimpe frowned. She didn't like secrets, especially in her own house. That evening, as they ate dinner, she decided to ask her husband about the room. "My love," she began, "there's a room at the end of the hallway. What's inside?" Mr. Alao's expression changed instantly. His face became stern and his eyes darkened. "Don't ever go near that room," he said firmly. "But why?" Adebimpe pressed. "What's so special about it?" Mr. Alao's voice grew colder. "Adebimpe, I have told you, that room is off limits. Do not question me again." His tone sent shivers down her spine. She nodded, afraid to push further. Days passed, but Adebimpe couldn't stop thinking about the room. She noticed her husband often disappeared into it late at night and locked the door behind him. One evening, while he was out of the room, she decided to take a closer look. She approached the door, her heart pounding. The door was locked as expected, but she touched the handle. She noticed it was slightly loose. What could he be hiding? She whispered to herself. Just then, she heard footsteps behind her. She quickly turned around to see the housemaid staring at her wide-eyed. "Madam, please leave that door alone," the maid whispered urgently. Adebimpe crossed her arms. "Why are you so scared? What is inside this room?" The maid shook her head. "I don't know, madam, but everyone who works here knows never to touch that door." Adebimpe sighed and walked away, but her curiosity only grew stronger. One night, As Adebimpe lay in bed, she was awakened by a faint noise. She sat up, listening carefully. It was coming from the mysterious room. She crept out of bed and tiptoed down the hallway. The door to the room was slightly ajar, and she could see a flickering light inside. Her heart raced. Should I look? She wondered. Before she could decide, the door quickly slammed shut. She jumped, startled. "Who's there?" she whispered, her voice trembling. There was no answer. She hurried back to her room, her mind filled with questions. The next morning, Adebimpe confronted her husband. "I heard noises from that room last night," she said. "What is going on?" Mr. Alao's face hardened. "Adebimpe, I warned you not to concern yourself with that room. If you value your life, stay away." She stared at him, shocked. "Value my life? What do you mean?" "Just listen to me," he said, his voice low. "There are things you don't understand. Don't make me regret marrying you." Adebimpe nodded slowly, but her curiosity burned stronger than ever. She was determined to uncover the truth no matter the cost. And so, the mystery deepened, drawing her closer to a secret that would change her life forever. Adebimpe's mind was restless. No matter how hard she tried to focus on her new life, the mysterious room at the end of the hallway haunted her thoughts. Her husband's warning played repeatedly in her head, but the more he told her to stay away, the more her curiosity grew. One quiet afternoon, Adebimpe sat in the living room, pretending to read a magazine. Her husband had left the house for a meeting, and the housemaids were busy in the kitchen. She glanced at the hallway, her heart pounding. This might be my only chance, she thought. She stood up slowly, her legs trembling as she walked toward the forbidden door. Each step echoed in the silent house, and her breathing became shallow. When she reached the door, she placed her hand on the handle. It was cold to the touch, and for a moment she hesitated. What if he finds out? She whispered to herself, but her curiosity was stronger than her fear. She turned the handle, and to her surprise, the door creaked open slightly. Adebimpe pushed the door open wider and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit with red candles placed around the corners. The air was thick and smelled of something rotten. Her eyes widened as she took in the sight. In the center of the room was a large clay pot covered with strange carvings. Around the pot were bones, small ones like those of animals, or so she hoped. "What is this place?" she muttered, her voice shaking. The walls were covered in symbols she couldn't understand, and there was a small altar with items she didn't recognize, cowries, feathers, and dried blood. As she stepped closer to the pot, she felt a sudden chill. The air grew heavy, and it felt like someone or something was watching her. Suddenly, the pot began to shake. Adebimpe froze, her heart racing. "Who's there?" she whispered, but her voice came out as a squeak. Before she could move, a dark mist started rising from the pot. It swirled around the room, forming into a ghostly figure. The figure had glowing red eyes and a face that looked like a skull. Adebimpe screamed, stumbling backward. Her head felt heavy and her vision blurred. "Why have you come here?" the ghostly figure hissed, its voice echoing. "I didn't mean to," she stammered, tears streaming down her face. The figure raised a shadowy hand, and Adebimpe felt a sharp pain in her chest. Her body became weak and she collapsed to the floor. Hours later, Mr. Alao returned home. As he entered the house, he immediately noticed something was wrong. The atmosphere felt tense, and the maids were unusually quiet. "Where is Madam?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Sir, "She's in the hallway," one of the maids said hastily. Mr. Alao rushed into the hallway and saw the door to his secret room open. His heart sank. He pushed the door open fully and found Adebimpe lying unconscious on the floor. "No, no, no," he muttered, kneeling beside her. He checked her pulse. It was faint, but still there. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered, his voice filled with anger and regret. He quickly carried her out of the room and laid her on the bed. Then he went back into the room, closing the door behind him. Inside the room, Mr. Alao lit more candles and began chanting. The dark figure appeared again, hovering over the pot. "She has seen too much," the figure growled. "She must pay the price." Mr. Alao knelt before the figure. "Please spell her. I will do anything." The figure's red eyes glowed brighter. "You know the rules. Bring another soul to replace hers, or she will die." "I will do it," Mr. Alao said, his voice shaking. The figure disappeared and the room fell silent. That night, Adebimpe woke up in her bed, her head pounding. She looked around, confused. "What happened?" she asked weakly. Mr. Alao sat beside her, his face unreadable. "You fainted," he said simply. Adebimpe frowned. "I was in that room. I saw something." Mr. Alao placed a finger on her lips. "You must never speak of it again," he said sternly. "Do you understand?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "What is going on? Alao, what are you hiding?" "Just trust me," he said, his voice softening. "Everything I do is for us, but you must promise me you will never go near that room again." Adebimpe nodded slowly, but deep down, she knew her life would never be the same. From that day, Mr. Alao became more secretive. He started leaving the house more often and spent long hours in the mysterious room. Adebimpe tried to act normal, but fear and suspicion consumed her. She couldn't shake the image of the dark figure or the strange things she had seen. Her dream of a perfect life was crumbling, and she began to wonder if marrying a rich man had been a mistake. Little did she know the nightmare was just beginning. Adebimpe tried to move on from the terrifying experience in the secret room, but her heart was heavy with fear and suspicion. She avoided the hallway where the room was and buried herself in house chores and watching TV, hoping it would distract her. Yet the memories of the dark figure and the eerie symbols haunted her dreams. One evening, as Mr. Alao prepared to leave for one of his late night outing, Adebimpe decided to confront him. "Where are you going again, Alao?" she asked, folding her arms. Her voice was steady, but her eyes revealed her worry. "It's business, Bimpe," he replied calmly, adjusting his gold wristwatch. "You know I have to take care of things to keep us comfortable. But why do you keep so many secrets? What kind of business is it that you can't tell me about?" she pressed. Mr. Alao stopped and looked at her, his face darkening slightly. "There are things you don't need to know, Bimpe. Just trust me." "How can I trust you when you are hiding so much?" she snapped, her voice trembling. He stepped closer and placed his hands on her shoulders. "Everything I do is for you, for us. Don't ask too many questions. It's better that way." Adebimpe wanted to argue, but the coldness in his tone made her stay silent. She watched him leave, the door slamming shut behind him. That night, Adebimpe couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind racing. "What kind of business does he do?" she muttered to herself. "And what was that thing in the room?" As the hours dragged on, she decided to do something bold. She picked up her phone and called her childhood friend, Shade. "Shade, I need to talk," Adebimpe whispered into the phone. What's wrong, Bimpe? Shade asked, her voice laced with concern. I think, I think my husband is into something bad, Adebimpe admitted, her voice shaking. Shade sighed. I warned you, didn't I? You were so focused on marrying a rich man that you didn't care how he got his money. Adebimpe felt a pang of guilt but didn't respond. Do you think he's into rituals? Shade continued. I don't know, Adebimpe replied, but there is this room in the house. It's not normal. Bimpe, be careful, Shade warned. If he's really into something dangerous, it could put your life at risk. The call ended, but Shade's words stayed with Bimpe. The next morning, Adebimpe noticed something strange. A delivery van pulled up outside the house and two men carried a large, heavy-looking box into the house. What is that? She asked one of the maids who had watched the delivery. I don't know, ma, the maid replied, her face pale. Oga said we shouldn't ask questions. Adebimpe's curiosity burned. As soon as the men left, she walked towards the box. It was locked and wrapped in black tape. She tried to move it, but it was too heavy. What could he be hiding now? She wondered aloud. Her thoughts were interrupted by Mr. Alao's voice behind her. What are you doing, Bimpe? She spun around, startled. I wanted to see what's inside. Mr. Alao's face hardened. Don't touch it, it's not for you. But Alao, no buts, he snapped. Stay away from my business, Bimpe, I have warned you. She nodded slowly, stepping back, but deep down she knew she couldn't let it go. Later that day, Mr. Alao left again, and Adebimpe seized the opportunity. She called the maid who had seen the box earlier. I need your help, she whispered. Help with what, ma? Help me open that box. The maid hesitated, but Oga said we shouldn't. Do you want to keep working here? Adebimpe interrupted. Then help me. Reluctantly, the maid brought a small knife, and together they began cutting the tape. The box cracked open slightly, and Adebimpe peeked inside. What she saw made her gasp. Inside were strange items, bundles of money, blood-stained fabrics, and what looked like a human skull. The maid screamed and ran out of the room, leaving Adebimpe frozen in shock. Before she could process what she had seen, she heard the sound of Mr. Alao's car pulling into the driveway. Panic gripped her as she quickly closed the box and tried to act normal. When he entered the room, he looked at her suspiciously. Did you touch the box? He asked. No, she lied, avoiding his gaze. Mr. Alao's eyes narrowed, but he didn't say anything. He walked over to the box, inspecting it carefully. You are lying, Bimpe, he said after a moment. His voice was calm, but it sent chills down her spine. I didn't do anything, she insisted. Mr. Alao stepped closer to her, his face unreadable. If you value your life, you will stay out of my business, he said coldly. Adebimpe nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. But in her heart, she knew she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Whatever her husband was involved in, it was far worse than she had imagined, and she was trapped in the middle of it.